So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. On behalf of Manila House, this is Bambina Olivares. Just give me a second. Dr. Mangahas, let me just change the spotlight. Okay. Sorry. Okay, take two. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. On behalf of Manila House, this is Bambina Olivares, Director of Programming, welcoming members and non-members alike to today's virtual conversation presented in partnership with Akademyang Filipino. Can democracy win in May 2022? If this is your first time to join us online, allow me to introduce Manila House. We are a private members club that opened in February 2017 with the aim of bringing together an assemblage of people from the business, creative, cultural, and intellectual communities who are drawn to each other by a shared interest to continuously learn about art, culture, food, business, and politics, and from the diversity of their fellow members themselves. It is a community of curious, committed, and caring individuals that lives on beyond the physical confines of the club. That said, for non-members among us, you might like to consider membership to Manila House. We have a limited number of memberships still available. Please email membership@manilahouseinc.com for more information. Please be informed that Manila House, in compliance with the allowable IATF and LGU capacities, is open for dine-in and takeaway to fully vaccinated members and their guests, and our takeaway service is open to the public. Please call us on 0917-816-3685 to place your orders. We also have your Manila House favorites now available in the frozen, ready-to-heat version. So before we begin, just a few ground rules. This event is being recorded and will be up on the Manila House YouTube channel in a day or two. Please use the chat box and the Q&A box for any questions and comments, and we'll get to your questions as we go along. Thank you very much. So now on to today's topic, can democracy win in May 2022? So does democracy even have a fighting chance in the upcoming elections? Take a quick glance at the different candidates running for the various positions, from president and vice president to senator and representative. Depending on which side you favor, you are either thrilled that your candidate is leading in the polls, nervous but hopeful about your candidate's chances, terrified about the policy platforms, as well as the track records of certain candidates. You may even be disgusted altogether at the uninspiring lineup of the same old family names. And then, of course, there are the polls, which can mislead, influence, or dishearten. So how do we choose the right leader? How do we make sure voters are not bought and all votes are counted? And is there enough time to get this right? There's, at this point in time, having said that about time itself, the words of the poet T.S. Eliot come to mind for some reason, and I quote very loosely: there will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of toast and tea. To me, that sounds like the political situation in the present-day Philippines. So helping us to make sense of these questions are three eminent political analysts, academics, sociologists, and journalists: Dr. Mahar Mangahas, Richard Heydarian, and William Yu. Allow me to introduce them. Dr. Mahar Mangahas is a Filipino economist who has done research on rice economics, land reform, poverty, hunger, income inequality, quality of life, governance, and public opinion. After basic schooling at the Ateneo de Manila, he went to the University of the Philippines and the University of Chicago, and where he earned a PhD in 1970. Dr. Mangahas has taught at the University of the Philippines, becoming Professor of Economics. He was UNICEF Social Indicators Consultant in Malaysia and Indonesia, Vice President for Research of the Development Academy of the Philippines, Editor of the Philippine Economic Journal, President of the Philippine Economic Society, President of the Marketing and Opinion Research Society of the Philippines, co-founder of the Philippine Agrarian Reform Foundation, and co-founder of the Foundation for Economic Freedom. In 1985, he co-founded the Social Weather Stations, SWS, the Philippines' leading institute in quality of life monitoring, opinion polling, and survey archiving. He was president up to September 2021, and then now he is chairman emeritus of the SWS. SWS incidentally received the 2019 award for the betterment of human condition from the International Society for the Quality of Life Studies. Next up is Richard Heydarian, who is a political analyst and columnist at the Philippine Daily Inquirer, as well as an author. He is currently an associate professor in geopolitics at the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, a special lecturer at San Beda University, and has delivered lectures at the world's leading universities, including Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, and Beijing universities. He was previously a visiting fellow at National Chengyi University in Taiwan, and an assistant professor in political science at the De La Salle University. He's a columnist at the Philippine Daily Inquirer, an analyst at GMA Network, and has written for the world's leading publications, including the New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, Foreign Affairs, and is a regular contributor to Al Jazeera English, Nikkei Asian Review, South China Morning Post, and the Straits Times. He has written extensively on Philippine politics, populism, and Asian geopolitical affairs. His latest books are The Rise of Duterte, A Populist Revolt Against Elite Democracy, and The Indo-Pacific, Trump, China, and the New Global Struggle for Mastery. He's also a regular contributor to the leading global think tanks such as Center for Strategic International Studies, Brookings Institution, and Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR. His forthcoming book is China's New Empire. And finally, we have William Yu, who is a professor at the Ateneo de Manila University and a board trustee for Ppcrv, sorry, I can't, Pastoral,
Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting.
Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting. Sorry, William Yu is considered the CTO ng Bayan. He runs technology for MDI Navarra, working on various projects involving digital transformation, elastic infrastructure, and end-to-end agile DevOps. He is an active advocate of shaping the internet and technology policy, working with organizations such as the Internet Society, the Asia Foundation, PHCERT, Ppcrv, and the Department of Information and Communications Technology. He is a teacher at heart and continues to lecture at the Ateneo de Manila University. So with that, let me turn you over to, I'd like to acknowledge before I turn over to you, Dr. Mangahas, I'd just like to acknowledge the presence of a chairman of Akademyang Filipino and several members of Akademyang Filipino with whom we've partnered several times, including Justice Conchita Carpio Morales and Justice Tony Carpio. So over to you, Dr. Mangahas.
Shall I share my screen then? Right. All right. Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to Conchita Carpio Morales and Tony Carpio, if you are there. Glad to see you. Now I'm quite conscious. Am I coming out loud and clear, Bambina? Yeah.
Yes, you're fine.
All right. I have 15 minutes. I'm conscious of that, and we'll be sparing in what I say. As you see in that slide, I have 3 attachments. I have been kicked upstairs at SWS, so I'm not the speaker because I'm not the president anymore. Yes, as a board. I am an academician with the NAST, and that's, that involves ongoing responsibilities in the science community. And I write a column once a week in the Inquirer. What I say here is all personal. We may not attribute any of this to SWS itself, or NAST, or PDI, but there are lots of places where you can get posts if you're a little industrious. In particular, I am citing here many of my columns and put the dates so that you may look at them for more details, right? More details. I'm conscious that my role here is to clarify opinion polling vis-a-vis the elections and democracy in general. So I'll focus on that and how it operates. My first general point here is that polling is not a one-shot affair. It is long-term. The opinions that people have are not cast in stone. They change from time to time. In fact, our work is really looking at what people think over time. And so we repeat what we poll periodically. Maybe as often as quarterly, maybe annually, maybe not as often, but we repeat. We repeat, we keep, we look at things over time. And to me, that's very important. So whatever you see, that's as of when it was done and where it was done, and you keep it in mind, and it's not necessarily permanent. And what I advise is that you look at what happened in the past so that you will see how stable it was or which way it was going. First column I want to point out to you is the DIY social survey, which means do it yourself social survey. I put the dates there of my columns so that you will see. But the point I'm trying to make here is that everybody can do a survey. And when I use the term survey, I mean scientific, random sample-based, representative. If it's not a probability sample, not random, I don't call it a survey. It's, it's like a reporter talks to somebody and says, this is the opinion of so-and-so, which is fine, right? But it's not representative of any group. You don't have to do it representative of the entire country. Of course, that's a big job, but you can do it of some group in which you're interested, in your town, in your school, wherever. And that matters. That matters. But ultimately, the way whereby a survey is confirmed is by other people doing it, not just one. We welcome that. We welcome that. Do a survey, do it well, repeat it, and keep your data. And your data should be as high quality as you can make it, because there's no sense in keeping data that are of poor quality. You only want to do good quality, even if it's small, and keep it and see what happens in the future, because polling is not short-term. Polling is pro-democracy, all right? It's not neutral. We are not neutral about the issue of democracy and authoritarianism. We are pro-democracy. Of course, we look at what people think about it, but the ones who don't do polling are the ones who are anti-democracy because they don't care what people think. It doesn't matter. And the third point there is democracy is a struggle. It's not a sure thing. The forces for it and against it move in both ways. And we just have to keep on doing it. So if people say, can democracy win? Well, why not? If you mean win in the election, well, why not? Matagal pa yan. So just keep on. If you're into polling, just keep on doing more polls. Now, in particular, let me show you one chart. I have only one chart to show. And this is a chart which asks people to choose between three opinions. And one is the opinion that democracy is preferable to any kind of government all the time. That's the blue line. And the 54% is the latest figure, which is in May of 2021. The percent who always prefer democracy. We call those committed Democrats. And the second choice is the choice of saying sometimes an authoritarian government is preferable to the democratic one. So that's a kind of a soft choice. No? Doesn't mean you'd like authoritarianism at any time, but say sometimes. Those are conditional authoritarians. And then there's a neutral choice. It doesn't matter for somebody like me, whether it's democratic or authoritarian. And I show you this to prove that Filipinos have always preferred democracy by far to authoritarianism or to just neutrality, all right? We Filipinos, we are pro-democracy. That's a fact, right? That's a fact. Now, the issue of memory. This is because of the emergence of Bongbong Marcos running for president. This is very strange because his father was one of the best-known dictators in the whole world. We have polled what people think about martial law. I have 3 columns there. Well, the first 2 are the more important ones. 30 years without the dictator. I wrote that in February 2016. That's at the beginning of the Duterte administration. And I also wrote, glad to be rid of Marcos, February in 2020, which talks about mainly our polls when we were free again, 86, 87, and so forth. And all of those are anti-dictatorship. All of those are anti-Marcos. But there's only one characteristic of Marcos that people agreed to, and they said he is, quote, brave, a brave person. The other one has to do with freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and I just note there that that is something we have to worry about. People don't see that there is press freedom. Well, people have many criticisms. I'll show you those criticisms. We have many polls about the pandemic. What's the situation? Right? Because surely this is important. The gloomiest time ever. And when I say ever, I mean considering that we've been doing these things for 30 years. We have time series. We're very proud of doing time series from 1986 to the present. In fact, we even have pre-1986 in conjunction with some other organizations with which I was connected, 1985, even 83. And the pandemic has been the gloomiest time. We reached indicator levels so bad, we had to design a new term, catastrophic. Suffering, very intense. And I like to use the term the state of the people, not the state of the nation. The people, our indicators are about people, not about production, all right? I'm an economist, but I'm against indicators that depend on money or production. It's how the people feel. It's not how much got produced that matters. And then lastly over there, last November, is my column, 2 years of worsening. So we've had no respite. But although in December there was a little bit of a glimmer that maybe we might be close to the end of the tunnel. The policeman approach. This is a situation we find under the present administration, which has failed. That has failed. Maybe drug addicts are a little less visible, we would admit that. But people don't feel safer. And we have that quarterly. People's feeling about the security of their homes against burglars has not improved. And people don't see the policemen as heroes, more as villains. They don't believe the nanlaban claim of the administration. Human rights is a really very, very important issue. And the current administration has not convinced the Filipino people that human rights is not important. Another area which is important to democracy is this pro-China pivot of the current administration. That's never been accepted by the people. Not as unaccepted, as rejected as the claims about EJKs being justifiable. Nothing has changed to make people feel better about China. In fact, what China fears is democracy. See? China is not democratic. China doesn't have opinion polls. China doesn't dare publish the books about the arbitral tribunals, the war finding. In fact, I think the way to reach China is to reach the people, not their government. Because I don't see why we can't be friends with the Chinese people. But the Chinese government, unfortunately, is practicing imperialism. Now, polls are listening devices, right? They're not propaganda. They don't speak out. They're not microphones. They're earphones, not microphones. Filipino voters are not sheep. They don't go for the llamado. They don't go. Actually, we have even tested that, asking people whether they're going to vote for likely winners, especially for senators, and avoid the likely losers. No, not true. Very slight effects only. Very slight, very slight bandwagon effects. And sometimes the underdog effect is even greater than the bandwagon effect. So voters are not sheep. What polls really try to do, I mean, the ones who are in that propaganda industry, the ones who are in the advertising profession, what they're trying to do is to drum up support, drum up contributions. That's, in fact, that's even recorded abroad. They can correlate contributions with the results of the polls. But polls affecting voters, no. That's pretentious. All right, that's pretentious. The ones who say that they are ahead, act as though that's gonna be this case forever. No, that's not true. Well, I wrote in October, too early to worry, because that was October. Of course, now it's January, and the campaign period is about to begin. So of course, people are thinking more about it. But at this point, even in the past, we found out from exit polls that only about half of the people said that they had decided their votes. And up to early in May, there's still about 1/4 who say they haven't decided. And on the day itself, 10%. So there's lots of room. There's lots of room. People consider, people think, people talk to each other. And as for the memory factor, This is not only personal memory. This is clan memory. This is institutional memory. You don't say that because a certain person is only 35 years old, he doesn't remember martial law. No. There are lots of institutional memories to look at. There are the universities, the teachers. The teachers are, the biggest single group of government employees. They can be mobilized in order to teach people the right kind of a history. So polls are not propaganda. And by this, I'm talking about scientific polls, because if they're not probability samples, I don't even look at it. I don't bother. They waste my time. All right? They will tell me what some actors are trying to do, but they don't tell me what the people are thinking of in terms of voting. Right? Now, mind you, of course, I am supporting the polls that SWS does or will be doing or might release, but those releases are not up to me. All right, they're up to the management, and I'm no longer in the management. I'm in the cloud somewhere. Although I do get a chance to look at what they're saying, at what the polls are saying. We will follow the law and all ethical principles of polling, and we'll back up what is on our website. But we have a warning on our website. If it's not there, don't even ask us to comment about it. All right? It's going out by some propagandists. We are not propagandists. Right? We are purely in scientific research. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mangahas. Can I turn over to you right now, Richard Heydarian?
Yeah.
Over to you, Richard.
Once again, yeah. I just got challenged by Mahar to show us and some number of data, which I think is very important. Thank you very much for that. Just let me apologize in advance because I have to right away leave after my presentation. I'll try to stick around for William's talk as much as I can, because I have another talk with folks at Ateneo de Davao on a similar topic. But I thought it's important to raise some of the important data because Mahar, I think, touched on some very, very important points. So let me just share screen shortly. So I have just some 4 quick points to talk about. The first thing, of course, I want to talk about is actually the overall political zeitgeist in the Philippines. So if you look at it, 1 second, sorry. I have to pull out another. So if you look at it, Mahar a while ago talked about, okay, sorry. Okay, actually Mahar a while ago talked about how there's a very high level of support for democracy. I see that in many ways, but at the same time, I want to say that if you look at it, I think the definition or understanding of democracy perhaps has to be further substantiated. And I think a lot of Filipinos, their understanding of democracy is simply elections. If you have elections, regular elections, we have democracy. But everyone knows that democracy is beyond that. And I think if you look at some of the other data, they show more troubling trends in the Philippines. And I raised some of this in some of my works when I tried to analyze the rise of President Duterte and why he has maintained such a high level of popularity, which I think all credible surveys show it. So for instance, this is a 2017 2014 World Values Survey that I cited in one of my works. If you look at it here in the Philippines, close to 60% of the citizens said that they prefer a strongman who does not even have to bother with elections. So, I mean, we can have debates about the methodologies here, but if you look at the Pew survey, for instance, when people were asked, do you prefer a system whereby a strong leader can make decisions without interference from parliament or courts? Meaning, do you believe in institutional checks and balances? Look at how small the number of Filipinos who were definitely for it, and how large was the number of Filipinos who were fine with a person who doesn't even bother with institutional checks and balances, right? So I agree with Mahar that I think if we talk about the generic notion of democracy, vast majority of Filipinos are for it. But once you discuss liberal democracy, once you discuss institutional checks and balances, once you discuss the possibility that a strongman leader can provide more effective public services, then the answers are very ambivalent and actually very troubling. And in fact, look at it. Countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, and to a certain degree, even Turkey, a lot of countries who are actually now in the grip of authoritarianism, populist authoritarianism, they have very similar numbers, especially Indonesia and India, right? Which are also under populist leaders, although one is much more progressive than the other, meaning Jokowi than Modi. So this is where I've been very troubled with the political zeitgeist in the Philippines. And this is where I'm not surprised that the Marcoses are making the kind of gains they're making. Nonetheless, let me just be very quick about this. The first thing I want to talk about is that when we look at the Philippine elections, they're inherently very unpredictable. I mean, just look at the past 30 years. I think Estrada was the only one that had early lead and more or less pulled it off towards the end. But whether we're talking about Villar, who was kind of strong in the beginning and then petered out, whether it was Binay, who petered out after January of 2016, we can go on and on and on. Who thought even Ramos could pull it off in 1992, for instance? So if you look at it, unpredictability is something that is very inherent to our races. And there are three factors that you have to keep in mind. First of all is this massive party switching and overnight parties, not to mention, thanks to President Duterte, this replacement candidacy shenanigans and antics that they've been pulling off, which is really a mockery of our political system. And my goodness, I think the ruling parties has been trying to push COMELEC to once again give them a chance for some sort of a replacement or whatnot. The other thing we have to keep in mind is the Philippines only has a single round first past the post system, which is really bizarre. Because if Chile and Peru had that system, they would have had completely someone else in charge of their country right now. The two right-wing candidates, whether it's Fujimori or the right-wing Trumpian guy who ran in Chile. But thanks to the run of elections, there was a chance for the opposition and centrists to come together. That is why they have progressive presidents in Peru and Chile right now, which are countries that are not too different from the Philippines if you look at their overall political zeitgeist and socioeconomic standards. Now, the other thing, of course, in the Philippines is that we are a melodramatic country and drama really matters. And we saw, for instance, the debates in 2016 were a big factor in really depleting support base for Binay. I think Binay, his biggest mistake was he joined the debates. He should have probably not joined the debates, but they were COMELEC mandated. But Duterte was really the breakout star there. You know, his ridiculous jet ski comments, his trash talk against Mahar Mangahas, all of those things actually put him really in a pole position. And from there, he built up his support. So these are the factors that make it very, very unpredictable. Now, let me talk about Bongbong Marcos. This is very interesting because we have a lot of supposed analysts and supposed experts there who say, oh, Marcoses have a solid base of, let's say, 30, 25% or so. So, the 50% they have, they're going to be solid on that. But, what's interesting to me is that actually, if you look at it, just 6 months ago, 2 quarters ago, look at Marcos' number. It was 13% only. I mean, if this guy had a solid base of 25, 30%, why was he so low just 2 quarters ago? And in fact, it's interesting to see that up until August, Bongbong was not even sure he's going to run. And it was really the Dutertes who were in the pole position, but they were so complacent and hubristic, and all this Bongo Sara thing just exploded out of proportion that Marcos was able to make a move. But another interesting factor to look at this is this. Had Sara run actually and Lenny not run, it's even possible that actually Isko Moreno would have been the front line, at the very front line of this race. So these are very interesting numbers that we have to keep in mind, which talks, so I'm not saying anything is set in stone. I think absolutely Mahar is right. Nothing is set in stone. It's a very fluid race. Nonetheless, as we get closer to May, I think certain level of crystallization is happening. So if you look at the Okta survey, for instance, it mentions that close to half of Marcos' current supporters are saying they will definitely not change their mind. But then again, I mean, looking at our voters, I don't want to say they're too fickle, but I'm always going to take these numbers with a grain of salt because Marcos was 13% only just 6 months ago. So if there was really such a massive outcry for the Marcoses, why was he struggling just 2 quarters ago? Why was he not even sure? So that is where you have to look at elements of contingency. And this is where, let me just stop my screen share because I want to go back to my key points quickly. So if you look at what's happening now, actually, in many ways, I think there's what I call the Sara All effect. I think the moment that Sara Duterte made that alliance with Marcos, look at Marcos' numbers, for instance, in the Pulse Asia survey. His largest geographic base of support, guess what? It's not the North, it's in Mindanao. He's at 63% in Mindanao. And my sense is that's hugely a Sara effect, right? And let's see what President Duterte is going to do later today. I think he's going to give a speech. We don't know what he's going to do. But I definitely think that alliance with Sara and the division within the House of Duterte was absolutely a big factor in determining the outcome we're seeing right now, right? Nonetheless, let me go to the second element. I'll try to be quicker about this. What we're witnessing today is nothing short of a counter-revolution. Goebbels, the German guy, I don't want to say more, he said once that what our purpose here is to erase the 1789 revolution in France, right? My sense is the purpose of the Marcos's running is essentially to erase the 1986 revolution in the Philippines. Everything they say, everything they stand for, and everything they're most likely going to do, including constitutional change, if he really wins this big and consolidates an alliance with Arroyo and the rest after these elections, it's going to be in one way or another erasing the legacy and the core vision of the 1986 revolution. Nothing short of that. This is what you call a counter-revolution. And it's a counter-revolution which in historical perspective should not come as a surprise. The French had it with Napoleon III. After 1848 revolutions in Europe, we saw Bismarck and all of these reactionary elements come into power. This is nothing new, right? And absolutely what we also have is authoritarian nostalgia. I know many people blame my generation, the millennials, or even the Gen Zs. But guess what? A lot of people are strongly pro-Marcos are people from the older generations who have some false nostalgia about some sort of a golden age. My good friend Leloy Claudia had a term for them. He calls them Tito Montero. Ito yung mga 56-year-old upper middle class Filipinos that say, oh, paano ni Marcos? May disiplina. Ganito kami noon. Yan ang the best. You know, these kinds of people have been a concern. And in fact, if you look at the exit polls by SWS in 2016, a lot of millennials actually were Lenny rather than Marcos, although dynamics are changing these elections thanks to TikTok and among other things. But clearly, the Marcoses have been able to make the most out of judicial impunity. I mean, both Imelda and Bongbong are convicted, right? And yet they're running for offices and walking around. This is mind-boggling. I just had an interview with BBC this morning, and I mean, people are scratching their head. How is this happening in the Philippines? So I had to explain it. You were talking about the fact that the pillars of democracy, political party systems, and independent media, those two elements have been hugely degraded in the Philippines. In fact, the political party system, frankly, doesn't even exist in the Philippines. We have a no-party, multi-party system. Our educational institutions, it was not until I actually was born in Marcos Highway in Baguio, according to my mom. I was coming out. So, you know, until I went to UP Diliman, my idea of the Marcos era was not really that accurate. Let me just put it that way, right? But it was really in college, in UP, when I got to understand how bad the situation was during them. And that says a lot about the deficiencies in our basic education, the whitewashing of the martial law era, which is a fantastically reckless thing that has happened over the past 35 years. A lot of our folks do not really know what the heck happened. And just look at the tremendous amount of inequality in our political system. 40 richest family took home 76% of newly created growth in 2013, according to the World Bank. I don't think that trend has improved. I think it has stayed the same or even got worse in the past few years. Up to 90%, if you include the anak sa labas, no? Out of wedlock kids of politicians, up to 90% of the legislature is dominated by political dynasties. So the mockery of our democratic vision and hopes of 1996 revolution has been going on for such a long time. And the Marcoses were so good in exploiting all of these deficiencies, resentments with the system, and what I call democracy fatigue, based on the numbers I showed you by Pew Survey and World Value Survey. The third thing I want to talk about very quickly is this. I was surprised during an interview with James Jimenez. I asked him, because the issue of sharp power is a big issue. When I was based in Taiwan, Chinese election interference in Taiwan was a big issue. In America, Russian election interference is a big issue. In the Philippines, we're not talking about it a lot. But does that mean there's no election interference threat? Absolutely. There is a threat, right? We know there are powers there who have an interest in making sure a certain candidate wins. And that certain candidate just last night, in an interview with Tito Boy, made it very clear that he's not going to stand up to China, that he just wants diplomacy, whatever that means, right? That he didn't even mention our mutual defense treaty with the Americans. He didn't even mention ASEAN and Code of Conduct negotiation. So there's a power outside there who has an interest in a certain candidate or two to win in these elections, right? And for us not to have any mechanisms to even know what on earth is happening when it comes to the integrity of our elections, that is mind-boggling. And in fairness to COMELEC, they just don't have that capability, even if they may have the mandate, right? So this is worrying. And the last thing I want to say very quickly is this. What we need in the Philippines, during elections and beyond elections is really a movement. The Americans got the progressive era movement in the late 19th century to get rid of their Gilded Age with a certain degree of success. We need something similar. We need a mobilized social movement to push for institutional reform and resist should current survey trend lines continue into the May elections. If the counter-revolution succeeds, you need to resist that. You need to make sure that they're not going to upend the Constitution and create a system even worse and even with more loopholes than the current constitutional setup we have. So just to end on this point, I think counter-revolution has been succeeding in many ways, not because it is inherently better or it's inherently what the Filipino people want. It's because we did not optimize and maximize the inherent great promises of the 1986 revolution. And that's why we're paying the price for that. I'll keep it there and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. I mean, the chat box is heating up with lots of comments, so I'm sure there'll be questions later on. So I hope you can stick around for that. And also, just before I turn over to Dr. Yu, just wanted to say there was a question here, which I think, Richard, you were able to clear up in a way. Someone was saying they're confused about the title of the forum. Can democracy win in May 22 when elections themselves mean democracy? So I think you cleared that up in a bit, in a way, but our definition, there are many definitions of democracy. It seems very elastic. And I think democracy, there are candidates that stand for various degrees of democracy. So that's what we're trying to parse through, today, this afternoon. So on that note, I'm going to turn you over to Dr. William Yu of the, okay, let me get this right, because I did you a great disservice earlier, Dr. Yu, by not even saying the name correctly. Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting. That's Ppcrv.
Right. Thank you very much, Bambi, and thank you very much to the for inviting me to this event. And I believe Dr. Mahar and Richard have covered quite a bit already, and I'll try to focus more on what we see as a note and trying to answer the question. So, can democracy win in 2022? So first off, here's just a summary of what we think are some of the concerns with respect to the democracy. So first, the rise of fake news and disinformation. Again, this is not entirely new because fake news, technically speaking, and disinformation has existed for a while, but the velocity and volume in which the information is disseminated with technology has accelerated. So that's the first point. Second point is, to Richard's point, state actors are interfering with elections, right? It's a big deal in Taiwan. It's a big deal in the US. It should be a big deal here because they are, right? So this is a second concern we have. The third concern is distrust about the electoral exercise, the electoral system, and the political system in general. Again, the system is not perfect, both electoral and political systems, but it is a system we have. But the current distrust in the system is quite concerning as well, because even if, for example, the exercise of selecting candidates is distrusted, how can we ensure that the selected candidates are who we selected them to be? Fourth is political conversations have been highly polarized. So as the chat box has shown just a while ago, these conversations can really flare up a lot of emotions, whether it's a red versus yellow conversation or a Democrat versus Republican conversation in the US. And of course, the increase in the amount of vitriol and cynicism in election-related conversations can actually be seen as, I'm pretty sure, I haven't seen the Facebook chat box yet, but I am fairly certain there is a good amount of that already in the chat comments. But I'd like to focus not mainly on the things to be concerned about, because we've already gotten quite a lot of good ideas and inputs from the previous speakers. I'll focus more on what we feel are some promising things we see in this current election. So there are three things that we are hopeful about. So one is the promise of the youth. The second is that volunteerism is alive and well, and that we feel there is greater awareness and participation. So as an organization that mobilizes volunteers, we see this within our own base of volunteers. So first off, the promise of the youth. So first off, we see the increasing use of digital media and signs of shifting demographics. So even the comment that Facebook is for titas and titos and we shouldn't be using it, we should be using things like TikTok and Kumu more is already a sign of that, right? So there is a shifting demographic and the interest has been moving as well. Second point is in earlier elections, the youth turnout was low, right? In 2019, it has increased. We feel in 2022, it will be much, much higher, right? So this is a change and I think this is good. Third is due to lockdown restrictions, there was a concern about getting volunteers because, one is the base of Ppcrv volunteers. We have a good number of senior citizens, for example, that can't go out, and we have a good number of young volunteers that can't go out. But so far, volunteers have really turned up. And so we are happy and God truly provides. And here are just some pictures of some of the past sessions we have. So although online most of the time, we've seen that the attendance is actually quite good and the participation level is higher. And I'm speaking relatively because it has been quite high in the case of Ppcrv, but in this election, I feel it is higher than usual. Second point is that volunteerism is alive and well. As a volunteer organization, we require volunteerism to operate. So first off is the volunteers preferring to volunteer. Well, the challenge we have is that volunteers are there, but they prefer to volunteer for their political parties or their particular candidates. Now, for us, that is less volunteers for us because many of our volunteers have been leaving to actually support a candidate of choice. However, we feel that's a good thing, right? So we feel that even though they have moved on and maybe they were not volunteering for Ppcrv anymore, and they have decided to volunteer for a candidate or a political party, I think that's still a good thing because that spirit of volunteerism is still there, despite the fact that they are not joining a non-partisan organization. And there are many organizations that are lending a hand to allow volunteers to participate, right? And here again is some few pictures about the volunteers you have. So this is the 2019 election. So we have quite a large base of volunteers. So during the last elections, normally we get about 300 and sometimes it would peak at 500,000 volunteers. Now we don't know about COVID, but definitely we hope that there is more. So again, by horse, by rail, or by boat, we would get volunteers as well. Okay. And last but not the least is, of course, greater awareness and participation. Now, this one is definitely a lot more apparent in this election cycle. So first off, there is definitely greater interest. More and more people are talking about elections, election systems, and politics in general. It is now part of everyday dialogue. As a matter of fact, it is typical table conversation right now, at least better than the weather or what has happened in the last Korea or telenovela that we are watching, right? So political conversations have increased, and they have increased in organizational levels as well. So for example, in this election cycle alone, we have gotten many invitations to speak in front of various groups to talk about elections. And we're not even talking about the whole political landscape. We're just talking about elections themselves. So I could imagine that there are more conversations like these that are happening that involve the other aspects of the political system as well. So there's a lot more. And again, there are many more asks for workshops, debates, and educational sessions with respect to the elections and political systems. There's also a greater diversity of organizations. If you notice the list that I showed here, many of them are not exactly political in nature, right? So a lot of them are professional organizations, and that they have shown in interest. As a matter of fact, a lot of them have shown interest to volunteer as well to help with our process. And the positive note here is that the conversations are actually ongoing and people are talking about it more. So just a quick run through of the three things. But before we go, right? But before we go, the conversation doesn't stop here. We are happy that there is more youth. We are happy that there are a lot of volunteers, and we are happy that there's greater awareness and participation. But of course, before we go, the challenge is not over. We still need, the challenge of voter education and the challenge of political maturity is an ongoing thing. So we would like to plug a little commercial as well. So we do have a voters education campaign that we launched last year. It's called Iboboto Ko Makapil Pilipinas, right? So we've launched this last year, and it is ongoing right now. It is a series of train-the-trainer materials and training sessions, which focuses on values in which we should be expecting from our candidates. It comes in a number of medias. We have comics, we have videos, we have an anthem, we have an oath and things like that. So this is something we would highly encourage many organizations to look at and try about. It is hinged on 16 good values that we actually took from the Philippine Constitution. So makakadiyos, makatao, makabayan, and makakalikasan are the 4 major themes, and the 16 values revolve around these 4 major themes, right? And this is just a link to the materials. Then there are many other materials as well. You can visit us in our Ppcrv website or Facebook or Twitter or in Instagram, and you can get hold of our content and materials as well. All right. So thank you very much. And of course, as Ppcrv volunteers are always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. I think let's switch to gallery view now. RC, could you put us on gallery view? Thank you so much to all our speakers for their presentations. And Richard, are you still with us? Has Richard had to leave? Richard had to go already? Let me just check. Yeah, I think Richard had to leave. Anyway, we have a lot of questions here. Thank you for all your presentations, and a very a little confusing and enlightening at the same time. I wanted to point out something that you all brought up, especially Mahar and Richard. There's this myth that the Filipino voter is stupid, that, so to speak, lower class vote, CDE or DEF or whatever, is stupid, right? That they're the ones that actually, their votes can be bought, or that, they're not informed voters. But as Richard pointed out, and other surveys have pointed out in the past also, that Duterte's base was actually not the lower voting classes, but the middle and upper classes. And the same thing now that he touched on with, in the case of Bongbong Marcos, that the ones with the nostalgia for the past, and that the martial law years were the best years, are, that comes from older voters and not necessarily younger ones. You're out on the field actually talking to people and talking to voters. Is that true then? I mean, do we do a disservice to our fellow citizens that, from the so-called lower socioeconomic classes by assuming right away that they're uneducated and they don't vote, they don't make informed decisions when it comes to voting?
So I can give a quick comment there. So I had a conversation with a parish priest in a very, let's just say, very popular parish, and this one will prove a point. So he raises a conversation. In this particular parish, a lot of the voters voted for the current president, right? And some of the reasons that they voted were many. They were disillusioned by the previous administration. They felt things were changing, etc. So there are various reasons on the reason why they voted for that the president. Now he asked the same question again, right? So after the president was already president, and we had a few years of running under that, working under that president, he asked the question again, and the answer he got was straightforward. The question he asked is, "Would you still vote for the current president, knowing what is happening right now? Na hindi siya nag-jet ski, etc., right?" I mean, straight question, and not being political and all, but just being curious about how people would react. And the answer was yes. Most of them would still vote for the current president. And he asked why. Well, the streets are a little cleaner. The tambay who used to wear a sando, who was hanging out at the corner, is no longer there. And at the end of the day, if you look at it, they would still vote for the same president. That being said, we were still thinking, but that's not the greater scheme of things and the like. And we may think these at the back of our heads, but at the end of the day, it still matters to them, because if every administration wasn't able to get rid of the tambay on the street and stuff like that, then for them, it's still a problem. Now, it may be anecdotal or it may be specific to one parish, although this is quite a common theme we have when we discuss these things. But at the end of the day, we have to tell people to think longer or broader. But it's very hard to tell people to think about broader issues if under Maslow's hierarchy of needs, sa basic pa lang, medyo nahihirapan na sila. So it's very hard to judge people. I don't think I'm fairly certain they are not incompetent or they don't know what they're doing. They're just making a decision based on what they see and what they need right now. Now, the hope is, of course, as we progress and we get people to think about it more, we need more conversation so that people can think about what's happening beyond just the microcosm of that street or that alleyway. So just a quick sharing. Now, it may not answer the question directly, but that, the hope adds to the conversation.
Or did you want to add something? No, did you want to add something to that about the general state of the Filipino voter? Is he really that uninformed? Can he really be bought easily? Or, is there is it very unfair to say that the lower socioeconomic classes have no idea what they're doing and then just vote with their emotions, for example, or vote for whoever pays for their vote?
We've done a little research on that, and one can look it up. We will repeat those things, by the way. But aside from feeling that it's okay to accept money and then vote the way you like, people don't feel that winners are just on account of machines and not on account of real popularity. They think it's really popularity which gets them there. They feel that they decide for themselves and they're not just being told for whom to vote, for example. There are enough of those to make me feel that people are doing their voting responsibly. Now, education, we can't do much about that. I mean, not quickly, because it's a very sad fact that half of our adults only half have finished high school. And to me, and I'm talking about the junior high school, that should be the minimum amount of education, basic education. But you have so few who reach that point, and that's still a little sad. But then at least we have that clear. We always publish our data broken down by educational group, and that's more accurate. I don't believe this class ABCDE kind of a thing, because that's not standard anyway. That's just a myth, just mythical. Also, it's maybe only about half, I would say, of the voters who are, who are actually linked to the internet for purposes of politics. They may see an ad here or there, but it's not it's not that big a device for reaching the people. Maybe for half. It's not as big as television used to be. No. But the sad thing about the television is that with the diminution of ABS-CBN in particular, that has hurt democracy a lot. And by the way, that was very unpopular, to take the main channels of ABS-CBN off the air. Very, very sad. That's part of the pain, of that was inflicted to our democratic centers. So it's not, as I say, it's not a kind of a hopeless situation. No, people are not sheep. People will depend on what they see. In particular, there are no debates. You got to have stand-up, face-to-face. Say what you think. No? Magsagot ka sa mga tanong. Talagang gano'n. Tingnan natin kung ano masasabi mo sa mga botante. And we'll see. And if it will be always no show, well, I think that will take a toll.
You were speaking about debates, and as we all know, there's a series of interviews, one-on-one interviews being held by Boy Abunda now with the various candidates, right? And one of the first candidates was, it happened last night. There was something brought up there about needing to change the system. And people have been saying this for a while, that the multi-party system, obviously, in the 1987 Constitution, was brought in to allow greater, participational democracy, right? But somehow it's resulted in the winning candidate not really getting a majority. It's a simple majority, but not a representative majority, of voters. So that would require, though, a change in the Constitution. And we're so you brought it up. There's a natural wariness about changing the Constitution, depending on who comes in next, right? Because they can use it to change other things in their favor. So how do we do that? How do we even do the French style runoffs, which is probably what we need?
You can't do that in the next few months, right? So it's
yes, of course, yeah.
Actually, I think we should have more of the old personal auditing, counting, back to NAMFREL, Ppcrv together. I think we should have checks on the machine count, because I'm not satisfied with the way that the request of Gus Lagman of NAMFREL for the innards of the machine counting system, that was rejected by the COMELEC. And frankly, I trust Gus Lagman more than anybody else when it comes to the IT of the counting system. I think I'd like to see manual, parallel auditing in the field, like it was in 1986.
But you mentioned COMELEC, and COMELEC is actually under a lot. It's very controversial now, certain decisions they've made or failed to make, right? And we brought up qualifications for a president, someone running for president. And I mean, one of the most basic things is not to have a conviction, or criminal conviction. So can we expect, apparently it's gone to this, it's supposed to go up to another level of the COMELEC judges or something. Can we expect any kind of judgment in that respect? As someone just pointed out right now, integrity of COMELEC is crucial. And there's big question mark.
Have watchers in the field, William. Even now, prepare it already. Have watchers in the field.
Yep. So as we keep on raising, the nature of this particular system is that it is dependent on what happens on the field, right? Because the machines are there, the ballots are there. So if the elections aren't clean on the field, then there are no watchers, then nobody can see. Like there are, for example, there is a possibility of ballot stuffing, right? So you run an election, there are extra, for example, 1,000 ballots. If there are no poll watchers, anybody in that precinct can take the 1,000 ballots and can vote whoever they want and just go, right? So that's the reason why watchers are very, very important. And I agree with with the Dr. Mahar there. I'd also like to raise another point that we are going to be losing 3 COMELEC commissioners, right? So if we have concerns about the leadership in COMELEC right now, this is a nice opportunity to make our voices known. So the chairman and 2 commissioners are going to be retiring in February, right? So as that particular case, I think we should lobby to our nearest congressman or senator, or if we know people in politics, this is a good time to make our voices known. Of course, we've made this call to larger organizations as well, because the political system tends to listen to large groups of people. So that's also one of the things that I think we should be doing now. Wow. And I believe as of this morning, when I read the news, there are no appointments that have been made yet, right? So there are 3 vacancies. There will be 3 vacancies come February in the COMELEC.
But COMELEC officials are appointed by the president.
That's right.
But does he? I mean, we've seen what's happened to the Supreme Court. Will he actually listen to the people if there's a clamor for, let's say, non-partisan COMELEC commissioners?
Yeah. So may I channel my inner Richard? As a populist president, right? I guess the answer is yes, right? If the voice is loud enough and noisy enough, you will listen. Because that's just the nature of this particular president, right?
But the voice was loud enough for the anti-terror bill and ABS-CBN and
malayo pa election.
And then we all must have heard the news about who now has the ABS-CBN frequencies, right? Who is awarded the frequencies and is apparently building a media empire. So that's also a little bit, alarming at this point. Let me just go to some of the questions here. Every election, Philippines has been a democratic country, yet the trend of voters voting for strongman candidates became apparent in today's society. How can we break this cycle and protect the democracy despite the rise of strongman leaders? Who wants to take this? Do you want to take this, Mahar?
Well, Mr. Duterte, definitely a strongman president. But Noynoy Aquino is not like that. Gloria tried to be. She even tried to impose martial law in 2006, but she was unable to do that. So I wouldn't say that there's been this tendency to, constantly go for somebody who's populist, except in in 2016. We just have to do better. That's all. There's no formula. There's no formula. Go to ground, William. Get your ground troops. Convince everybody to look at the candidates properly, lobby properly. Hindi kami nagka-campaign, ha? Hindi kami nag-a-advise on how to convince the people. Nakikinig lang kami. All right? The polls are not broadcasting devices. They're not microphones. They're earphones. That's all that they are. That's all that they are.
Yeah, and I'd also like to raise one point, and I think it came out in the questions as well, that we are, I think we're a country obsessed with president and vice president, but there are congressmen, mayor, governor. I think the ABS-CBN thing, if we really wanted that one way or another, I think we should choose better congressmen. I mean, at the end of the day, we keep on talking about who will win for president and vice president, but the political system needs more than that. And I think we also have to be equally discerning of our candidates for the local government position and our congressmen as well, just to add that point.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. But then our political system, and it's also come up in one of the questions here, we are kind of chained to the whole practice of political dynasties. And, it's almost like a business for some families, right? Politics, it's like one person won't be running, one member of this family won't be running for this particular cycle because they want to bring back another member of the family. I mean, you have provinces and towns and cities that have become strongholds for certain families. How do we break that? There seems to be no particular desire on the part of Congress to really break that system. So we're also, which is really
Have to work again.
in a way undemocratic. So we're also prisoners to that kind of
Slowly,
system.
little by little, convince the youth. Mahirap talaga. Mahirap talaga. Don't lose hope. No.
And the youth, William, you might know this. What percentage of the vote will they comprise this time?
It's quite large, I think, the last time we checked. But again, this is not based on the latest numbers. I think it's like, well, the definition of youth being less than 25, I think, or something like that, is 35%. So it's quite a large number. So it's actually the biggest in years. And I think this is also driven because in the past elections, 2016, 2019, a lot of young voters didn't register. So it was the largest base of unregistered voters. So COMELEC has a census number where they look at the number of potential voters per age group, and that the largest amount of unregistered voters tend to come from that segment.
So do you think it was, having said that, 35% of the youth, of the electorate will be the youth vote. It's obviously not a coincidence that the BBM campaign focused on harnessing that vote, using social media in particular to reach them. And to a certain extent, would you say they've been effective?
Well, I'm not an expert in that, and I don't exactly have the statistics. But it's just our hope that they will vote their conscience. And as the previous speakers have mentioned a while ago, Filipinos do tend to vote for their conscience. It's not a fixed thing, right? One survey can say this candidate is winning, then suddenly, out of the blue, that candidate is not, right? So I think people change their minds, and I think the youth are the same thing. Now, my hope is that as youth voters, they tend to be more open-minded and they tend to be more idealistic, and therefore it is also an opportune time for us to inculcate values to them. And of course, what we hope at Ppcrv is to tell them, what are the criteria for an ideal candidate, and we hope they vote for that. Now, in another leg, we're also trying to get them to volunteer, right? As long as they understand that their votes matter, then they're also less likely to sell the votes, right? So at the end of the day, even though we tell people, no, not we, but some people tell people that, you can take the vote buying money and just vote your conscience. At the end of the day, if the voter doesn't have an opinion either way, they might as well just vote for the person who bought them, right? But hopefully we're thinking that as the more younger and idealistic voters come in, they're less likely to sell their votes as well. But that's a hope. I mean, I know statistical data that shows either way, but that's just what we hope.
I actually have a lot of comments here about how to volunteer for Ppcrv, which is a really nice thing to see. William, you just want to repeat your details, your website, or
Yeah, so I can take that question, right? So the easiest and fastest way to volunteer for Ppcrv is to visit your nearest parish, right? So we are a fairly decentralized organization. We are parish-based, so visiting your nearest parish is actually the best and easiest way to volunteer for Ppcrv. Now, maybe some parishes have not mobilized yet, right? So if the parish has not mobilized yet, you can actually get in touch with us. So we do have social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So just find Ppcrv there. Or you can write us an email at hello@ppcrv.org. So that's the best. But definitely going to your parish would be the fastest way to volunteer for Ppcrv. And I believe many parishes have started to mobilize already because they're starting with their voters education campaigns already.
And in relation to that, there's a question as well about Ppcrv volunteers. How can we be sure that volunteers will not use their membership to the organization to promote or support any candidate during the elections?
Right. So as part of the requirements to be a poll watcher, right? So it is required that we be non-partisan, right? So that's a requirement. So how do we check that? And that's the reason why we're parish-based, because the people in Ppcrv national or even at the diocesan level cannot vet every possible volunteer. So we leave that at the parish level. Now, the nice thing about being parish-based is you tend to know your parishioners, or at least you know somebody who knows those parishioners. So that is essentially our basic check and balance. So the way we're structured as a parish-based or organization is like that. Now, even if you're not Catholic, you can still volunteer at the nearest parish. But we also have partner groups that are non-Catholic as well. So, for example, in Muslim Mindanao, we do have groups that are affiliated with Ppcrv for that part of the country. We also have Christian groups and evangelical groups as well. But you can just reach out to National, for example, if you want to volunteer. If you're a group that wants to support us, you can also reach out to us. But the very basic unit of volunteer mobilization would be the parish. And that's where the check and balances happen as well.
All right, thanks. And talking about checks and balances, there's another question here about the COMELEC again. And the question is, what can we do in the concrete as concerned citizens to hold COMELEC accountable? How do we conscientize them to stop them from even attempting to tamper with the election results? I mean, that question alone is really quite disheartening, because if you're the commission, it's a commission of elections, and there's already doubt cast upon its integrity. That doesn't bode well for, I mean, obviously that's why there's a need for citizen-based groups like Ppcrv and NAMFREL and all that, right? But are there any other ways to hold them accountable?
I think we just have to be present. Yeah. So yeah, sorry. Let me take that first. So I think we just have to be present. So there are a lot of activities with respect to preparing for the elections. Poll watching, or the actual election day poll watching, is just one of them. But there are so many activities. For example, if we have suspicions about F2 logistics, then volunteer as a logistics volunteer, right? We are allowed to observe the logistics when the actual machines move from warehouse to storage point to the voting places. That's actually part of things that we can observe as poll watchers. If we are concerned about the printing of the ballots, we can actually be observers in the National Printing Office as well. So there are many ways in which we can hold them to task, right? By just being present, right? And I think, for example, even things like the source code of the system, join the source code review and the trusted build, right? And if we are concerned about the functioning of the machines, there is an activity called the pre-lat, which will start in a few weeks, which is where they test each and every machine before they box it and ship it. We can also watch those activities. At the polling place level, there's an activity called final testing and sealing. We can actually also observe that, where they actually use the machine, they bring it to the place, they put test ballots, around 5 to 10 of them. Anybody can vote, and they will check if the machine counted the ballots properly, right? So that's another check that we as watchers are actually entitled to. And we also encourage the political parties, because we feel that if they are more active watching each other, yes, it also keeps the whole system cleaner, right? So those are some of the areas in which we can hold them accountable to, which is being there.
How can we guarantee that the losing candidate, whoever he or she may be, will not mount a protest? Like, I mean, it's become like a tradition that losing candidates, stage an electoral protest because they can't accept the results. And this is obviously like in the case of the current VP and, during the last elections that was contested as well. And, you know, it takes a lot of money as well to do the recount and all that. How do we know this is not gonna happen again?
We don't know.
We can't, right? I mean, we can't stop them from filing a protest because it is within their rights to file the protest.
Yeah, but it's also really disruptive. It's almost like it's only because they're Picon, and you know, for no other reason. But then again, that also is indicative of you know, the system and how it's so easy to cast doubt on the integrity of the system. Mahar, you spoke earlier about the teachers being able to educate the voters in, you know, in their own capacity. But education is also, I think, one thing that this particular cycle of elections has brought up is the failings in our system on kind of the structures in all sorts of, on all levels. Like, you talk about education, but then our educational system is really quite, you know, desperate at the moment. It's in crisis. And in fact, yesterday there was a very good webinar by the FEU public policy group about the state of textbooks in the country for the K-12 levels. And again, like you said, like you mentioned earlier, martial law is not, there's no critical approach even to martial law and how that's discussed, and even our colonial past and all that. So how you can't even mobilize education when the textbooks themselves are not accurate.
I don't mean teachers teaching school. I mean teachers just as moral authorities, wherever they are, being urged to teach whoever they can reach how to choose properly. Teachers are the biggest group of civil servants, you see. And for example, if the Department of Education, if the, would issue encouragement to teachers to teach the proper, history, not necessarily in the classroom, but just to tell everybody, hoy, dapat nyo malaman ganito. Kung sino maabot nila, no? Reach them and tell them ito ang talagang nangyari. That would mean a very big amount already. You know, I think we always have to be sensitive to the possibility of a martial law in one way or another. The increase in the salaries of the military and the police, it's been like a kind of a softening up of this group to listen to the executive. Kasi tinaas nila mga sweldo nila. But what's the ideology of the military and the police? What does the Philippine Military Academy teach its students concerning democracy and martial? Para sa akin, yan ang pinaka-importante. What is taught in the Public Safety College? It's a college for policemen. To their policemen, are they just being taught to follow orders no matter what they are? Aren't they being taught about democracy? I think if those values have been inculcated in our military officers, officer corps, and policemen all through the years, this is not something to be done in one shot, diba? But if we can see that, for example, in universities, that the students, the faculty, they have learned about democracy and government, no matter what their fields are. Why not in the Philippine Military Academy? That's a university course. See, what have they been teaching their military? Why did the military in 1986 not stop the People Power Revolution? I mean, as a whole, are they just follow your orders kahit na anong sabihin? I think at heart, they knew the difference between democracy and authoritarianism. Because you have to count on them. Huh? Why did, in people power too, why did the military say to ERAP, we are not with you anymore on this thing? Parang when that happened, parang it was hopeless, wala ka na, ERAP. People power too, has the backing of well-meaning military also. Because you need those people to be also Democrats and not not beholden. After all, where do they come from? Are they just the protégés of the local officials? No, I think the Philippine Military Academy is a place to go if you want to serve the people in a particular profession, not to get rich in particular, but just to serve. After all, you're not going to get rich unless you become a general, eventually, someday, but you're not going to go and immediately become a racketeer. You have to go there, you will be deployed. You have to have values on your side. You have to have principles on your side.
But isn't there a crisis of values? Now you mentioned values, which I was just going to bring up.
That's right.
We are facing a crisis
already. Why should the people who enter the academy be less principled than the people who enter UP or the other private schools? See? They're also they also go there with values, with civic values. We have to depend on them. We have to encourage them, and we have to remove the crooks. Because, syempre, yung mga crooks lang dyan. Yeah, that's where the rot has come in. The people who have been personally loyal to certain politicians, then they get to become government officials, senators.
Shouldn't the transmission of values, it should start from the top, I think. So if your leadership does not show those things, for example,
if the leader is a would-be dictator, syempre you cut him out already. Dapat mga iba dyan.
Yeah. Well, that hasn't quite happened in this administration, but I'm just saying they're also there to protect the sovereignty of the country, right?
This is hopeless.
Yeah.
Right? Or else we would never have even gotten here.
No, that's true. But, you talk about in the PMA and all that, our military and all that, they're there, and the police are there to defend the country, right? But if you have also leadership that, for example, won't stand up to outside threats such as China, so
nicely.
How
why has Duterte not been able to, to destroy the Philippine U.S. alliance completely? Okay, there are military there behind the scenes saying, "Sir, kung mangyari ito, sa'yo, really, he has backed off, huh? He has backed off.
Mm-hmm.
He has gone stronger on defense, the Navy, let's get help from India and like that.
Yeah.
Nag-iingat din siya.
No, that's good. I mean, at least I've heard that as well. So it's good that you have those cooler heads.
I don't know the insights. I'm just imagining. I'm not just imagining, but this is part of life, right? This is part of life.
Yeah.
There could still be military coups. Who knows? No?
Well, as we all know, there was an attempted coup.
They keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
But I mean,
if you're being too insensitive.
Mm-hmm. No, but as we all know, there was an attempted coup in the United States, right? January 6th last year, in a country that we never expected.
It's a worldwide thing.
Something
So
like that would happen, right? So,
almost.
you know, and you could also say that was people power in a way. It was just the wrong side of people power. But I'd like to bring up a question here in relation to that. And when you were talking about the United States and the Philippine joint military exercises. Now, contesting a VP election is one thing, but contesting a presidential election seems far more incendiary, especially a race this polarized, as Dr. Yu said. Are there steps COMELEC, Ppcrv, and NAMFREL can or should take preemptively to prepare people to accept the results, even in the event that a losing candidate they support contests?
It's a hard question because, again, we can't control people from filing protests, and we can't control people from not wanting the results as well. However, what we aim to do, or at least what we try to do, is get people to have faith in the system more. And the way we do that, at least in Ppcrv and our friends in NAMFREL, is we get people to volunteer. I mean, don't just trust whether I say it's clean or COMELEC says it's clean. You go out and you actually volunteer and you see for yourself, right? I mean, the more people participate in the process, the more hopefully confidence they gain in the process. And hopefully as well, the more they will, accept the results of the process, whether it is the candidate they support or not. I mean, as Ppcrv volunteers, we also have candidates that we support, right? But we're just not allowed to campaign for them. But at the end of the day, we're just hoping that people will make the best decision based on the information they have. And getting them to volunteer and participate in the process and get their hands into the process, we hope that will, add to a level of confidence. Again, the system is not perfect, but it is what we have.
I think we're running out of time, so I think that's a good point that you just raised, and kind of hopeful words as well. Dr. Mangahas, please just maybe summarize everything and give us something to be hopeful about for these elections.
I'm not an election expert. Our agenda, by the way, is the well-being, the human well-being of the Filipino people. Look at that, please. How are we doing? Maganda bang buhay natin? Maganda bang buhay natin noon? And so forth. We're constantly lobbying, against these standard indicators because they're too business oriented. Go to our indicators and look at what's really happening. Look at the poverty, the hunger, and so forth, which are very, very regular. See? That's our main subject matter. Not elections or voting. That's seasonal. Okay, that's seasonal, and we can't affect that either.
But elections, I mean, as you said earlier, people decide on who to vote for based on their needs as well. So their immediate needs.
The polls which will predict the elections will be the ones that are done in the first week of May. That's what matters. If some researchers want to make a reputation, then do that. Find a way to be sure that you're in the field in the first week of May and find out who people will vote for, and then stick that, and then that's where your reputation will be made. What's happening right now, well, you say, ganito. But the reputation is made there at the very end. Gotta be in the field then, and let's see. If you've never done that, then you don't have a track record at all.
Our elections will be in May 9? Am I right?
So, approximately. Kailan, William?
It's on a Monday, no? Second Monday of May.
Yep.
Am I right? Yeah. So you're saying that the polls that will matter will be that first week, the first week of May. So how often is the polling done?
everybody has to make their own move.
Yeah, but how often are you, for example, SWS, how often are they
We
going
only
out?
can guarantee quarterly. That
Quarterly.
means that before the election, we will have probably 2 rounds, but we can't predict when the final round will be. Because it's not only about the election, it's about everything. You know, it's not about who's going to win, right? Now, in the past, we've had support. ABS-CBN has been one of them. For example, we've had TV5 that has supported. We've had, I can't remember, but we always have had some media organization sponsoring these polls, and that's their role, really. You know, that's their role to do that. Especially the media organizations have a way to make their money back because they can, you know, they can sell advertisements.
Mm.
They have revenue generation from their news. They should be the ones, and they are the ones doing that. You don't have non-stock organizations doing that. It's unaffordable. Or you do it in your own place, you know, in your own location, small scale. So in the US, you have colleges and universities everywhere. They do polls in their own state alone. Of course, there is electoral college style, so you only need a state poll. You need 51 polls. And you can have, you know, that being done by 50 organizations. We have enough universities here who can do little surveys. 500, that's enough, you know, for a province to predict an election.
Well, okay, on that note, let's all wait for the first, anything can happen, basically, is what you're all saying.
That's how I started, you know, DIY, all right? DIY. Do your own. Everybody does it. That's science. Everybody works on it, compare. And when you get, you know, meeting of different scientific results, then you can trust it. Not just one. Not just one. Do it. And have the freedom to do it.
William, any final words?
Oh, thanks for that. And just to add to the point of Dr. Mahar, I think anything's possible, right? I mean, polls right now may say one thing, but it's still a ways till May, right? So I think we should continue. I mean, for those who are supporting a particular candidate, continue to support your candidate. For those who want to volunteer and be more aware about the electoral system, please volunteer, whether for your particular candidate or whether for Ppcrv. And of course, please visit your nearest parish if you want to volunteer, or you can email us at hello@ppcrv.org. Thank you very much.
Okay, and any questions that you might have after today, please, you can always email us at events@manilahouseinc.com. And if you'd like us to pass on any messages to the speakers as well today, or please let us know. And again, this talk will be up on YouTube. We've been streaming live on Facebook as well, and this talk will be up on YouTube in the next couple of days at the Manila House channel in YouTube. So I'd like to thank our speakers for joining us today. Thank you for this interesting discussion. It's a little hopeful, a little disheartening, I think, but I think, you know, we have to soldier on and you know, again, inform ourselves, be vigilant, demand for accountability and transparency. And yeah, and there's another comment that just came in: vote for the country, which is very important too. And vote for the kind of country you want to have as well, because as often said, we get the leaders we deserve. So if we want to deserve better leaders, we have to actually want a better country for ourselves and work towards it. So on that note, thank you so much to our speakers, Dr. Mahar Mangahas, Dr. William Yu, and Richard Heydarian, who had to leave for another forum. And I'd like to especially thank Akademyang Filipino for partnering with us again today. On behalf of Manila House, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.